It is Tuesday, August 5th, 2026, coming to you from America's beautiful North Coast, from the shores of Lake Superior. This is the American Dissent. I'm your host, Sam Martin.
And I'm Jen Schultz.
On today's show, we have results at long last in Michigan. Very late last night, or rather very early this morning, the Democratic primary race was called in favor of the insurgent candidacy of Abdul El-Sayed. Despite polls showing a wide gap between El-Sayed over Haley Stevens, the results turned into a dramatic squeaker. One must acknowledge the power of nearly $70 million of outside spending. The result will still be seen as a political earthquake, and will represent the test case the left has been looking for in the general election. Can left populist politics succeed in a general election setting within a split electorate? Michigan, in fact, saw several successes for the populist left. William Lawrence, co-founder of the Sunrise Movement of environmental activists, won convincingly in Michigan's 7th congressional district to take on one-term incumbent Republican Tom Barrett in a Trump +1 district. Also, DSA endorsed Donovan McKinney, defeated Democratic incumbent Sri Tanadar in the Detroit-based 13th district. Yet another surprising defeat of an incumbent this cycle. Several other DSA candidates had wins in down-ballot elections, though it was not a sweep. The populist left had a significantly less successful day in Missouri. Cori Bush in St. Louis went down to massive defeat in her rematch with AIPAC-backed candidate Wesley Bell, the incumbent, while Hartzell Gray lost much more narrowly in his primary on the other side of the state. However, important ballot initiatives in Missouri were also being voted on. One was to make ballot initiatives more difficult to pass in the state in general, which was a conservative attempt to do a runaround around the voters' continued support of abortion rights in the state, despite the legislators who continue to attempt to curtail the right in Missouri. The other initiative was to phase out the income tax entirely, to be replaced by massively increased sales taxes. Both initiatives lost by incredibly large margins, so direct democracy appears to be alive and well in Missouri. The same can be said of Kansas, which had its own conservative-backed ballot initiative. Judges in Kansas tend to be less conservative than the politicians in the state because of various longtime state rules about how judges are selected. The initiative would have forced direct election of judges, which backers of the measure believed would have led to a more conservative judiciary. This initiative was also defeated convincingly. In Washington state, the jungle primary system performed its role of keeping centrists in control, as some of the most conservative House Democrats in the country, notably Adam Smith and Mary Gluesenkamp-Perez, sailed through with a Republican to the general election. The election yesterday does raise questions yet again about polling and expectations, as El-Sayed's narrow victory suggests a much different electorate than the one a vast majority of the pollsters were finding. As we look ahead to primaries tomorrow in Tennessee, Saturday in Hawaii, and next Tuesday in Minnesota and Wisconsin, it's important for the candidates polling ahead to take nothing for granted and leave no stone unturned. These headlines and more up for discussion on today's Dissent.
Okay,
Man,
Sam,
Jen.
you must be okay. I know you're exhausted because you were up all night, but you must be excited. You're all smiles with that Michigan race.
I mean, it's an earthquake election. I will say, there was no way I could have gone to sleep. It was nerve-wracking. Seeing it so much closer than the polls suggested. And this again, Jen, this is happening again. In Michigan, if you remember, the polls were completely wrong in 2016 in the primary with Bernie and Hillary Clinton. Hillary Clinton was polling way ahead, and then Bernie won. And it just seems that there's something about Michigan the pollsters rather consistently miss.
I'm just happy that big money did not win. So I respect both candidates on their issue positions mostly, but it was, I mean, $70 million. I'm sure it's going to be more than that when all of the receipts are added up and reported. But wow, did Abdul El-Sayed have to overcome so much to win this. And he won by less than 1 percentage point. That is so close. I'm assuming there's not going to be a recount because Haley Stevens conceded, right? And
She
they're
did,
already
yes.
doing kumbaya, let's rally the voters and win this in November. So no recount, but very close. And I was looking at, I'm sure you did too, looking at the various counties, because my mom's in a very conservative county in the UP, the upper part of Michigan. And the few Democrats that are there supported Abdul El-Sayed. So it was interesting where he was picking up votes across the state. And, not Detroit, not as much in Detroit, but in the college towns, he was doing really well.
We need to dig into that Detroit thing. So I was watching some commentators and making sure I got some insight from people who know Michigan pretty well and Detroit pretty well about what's going on with that. And here's the thing, that's $60 million. And you're right, 70 million. And yesterday I saw 80.9 all combined. So outside and campaign spending combined. I mean, it's just a mountain of money. And so much of it was spent in Detroit. And a lot of it was on ads claiming or suggesting that Obama had endorsed Haley Stevens. And for a lot of voters in Detroit, this is what experts are saying. And it is a situation of the black vote and appealing to black voters. And one of the best ways you can do that, certainly in Detroit and a lot of other places, is to take the most popular politician in the United States of America, Barack Obama, and slap him on your literature. And that's what they did on behalf of Haley Stevens. They slapped Obama because way back in 2009, 2010, Haley Stevens, I think, was an intern or was involved in some way in Barack Obama's rescue of the auto industry in Michigan. That was one of the few, frankly, successes of the Recovery Act coming out of the financial collapse in 2008 was rescuing the auto industry. And Haley Stevens was on that team of people that worked to do that. I mean, she was quite young at the time. But Obama said some very nice things about her back when he was, campaigning for her when she ran for Congress back in the day, which wasn't that long ago. And that was a heated primary. Also, Jen, that was a primary that AIPAC got involved in to defeat a longtime Jewish resident, who the liberal Zionist, but very much in the vein of Brad Lander. But again, it didn't matter. And Andy Levin, I believe is how it's pronounced, or Levin, maybe one of the two.
Or Levine, yeah.
I'm sorry, but yeah, and so this is just this amount of money. But the Obama thing.
And Obama never corrected her, right?
No, he
did not get involved. But it's interesting because Donovan McKinney, who won his race against an incumbent, he was running in Detroit because in 2022, the current incumbent that just lost, Shree, won. And it was the first time Detroit did not have a black representative for a long time. So they were, I think, folks in Detroit, which is 3/4 of Detroit identifies as black. They were excited to get behind Donovan McKinney, and he was supporting Abdul El-Sayed. So you would think that would help a little bit, Abdul in Detroit.
Oh, I'm quite sure that it did but I think the expectation of the number crunchers was that Stevens would have a much better showing in Wayne County than she did. She needed to have won Wayne County by double digits in order to make up for. I mean, it's interesting. Abdul was winning in a lot of the school enclaves, like for instance, where Ann Arbor, Michigan is, where the university is. Abdul
and
won
Kalamazoo,
that handily.
Yep.
Kalamazoo, and also you talked about the UP, Marquette, Michigan, up there, the largest city.
Grand Rapids area, I think he did well.
Well, she won that county.
Oh, did she?
Yeah, I believe so. I can double check that, but because I used to know someone or I knew someone who used to live there. I don't know what the right phrasing is. Doesn't matter. But
so Grand Rapids went for Abdul 61% to 35%.
Okay, the city itself. All
the
right.
city, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was just looking at the county results.
Kent County, I believe. Mm-hmm.
So, but yeah, I mean, and that is one of the arguments that the Democratic establishment was using, and it rings very similarly to 2016. And the argument that was used about Bernie Sanders is, yeah, you can excite all these rich white kids, but what about the working class black people? And so what a lot of these kind of non-biased, I guess, commentators who aren't, part of the Democratic establishment, what they're saying is there's going to be no problem of these voters getting behind Abdul in the general election. First of all, that's not going to be an issue, number one. And number two is that by and large, their observation of the race were those lit pieces they got showing that Obama was standing behind Haley Stevens. And that for a lot of voters was the beginning and end of their being informed about this race, despite the enormous door knocking campaign and all that kind of thing. I mean, a statewide campaign, it is simply impossible to knock every door and talk to every voter, and also correct the record for every one of those $60 million spent against you in outside expenditure. It's just overwhelming, Jen. I mean, it's unbelievable.
Just makes me sick that all that money is spent on consultants and ads and could be used for so many other good purposes, including the November election against Republicans. But the race that I want to comment on is the Republican primary in Michigan's 13th district, congressional district. And this is hilarious because the Republicans that are running, one is Ari Hassan.
Oh, not the 13th.
Oh, not the 13th. That's McKinney's. That's
McKinney, yeah.
I'm sorry, it's the 8th, Michigan's 8th district. That's the GOP primary in the 8th. And that was Amir Hassan, who was endorsed by Trump. And then Thomas Smith, Republican, who dropped out of this race many months ago, long ago. And he won 50% versus 33%. So since he's not going to be, since he's pulled himself off, I'm assuming the general ballot, that his name won't be on it, but we'll have to verify that.
Yeah,
I don't know. Maybe his name will be on it. I don't know.
Yeah, Trump endorsed Amir Hassan. So this is a military veteran who converted from Islam to Christianity. And as one Twitter commentator I saw wrote, the one force that is more powerful in the GOP than Trump, racism.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Amir Hassan lost to an old white guy named Tom Smith. It's just like, if you wrote it down, people would think
because people go into the voting booth and they don't know who they're voting for. They just base it on their names. So they don't know. They didn't know Thomas Smith had dropped out of the race, right? So but it tells me that uneducated or uninformed voters were showing up in large numbers. Uninformed voters were showing up. They knew that it was important to vote in the primary. They just didn't know who they're voting for.
I just had the impression that most of those voters know who Trump is backing. I was just like, I really had that belief. I mean, it's similar, I guess, to an Obama endorsement in some ways, among certain communities. Like the experts say, Detroit, that Obama endorsement is a massive, massive deal. And of course, he didn't endorse, and he didn't say anything. I mean, it's incumbent upon Obama to start. Now that there are general elections, he must get off the couch. He must stop focusing on Netflix and start focusing on the future of this country. He's still, by politician standards, an incredibly young man. He's like a child compared to, the U.S. Senate. But,
in that race, did the Democrats have a primary in the 8th, Michigan's 8th? Because
why did I close those?
Do you have to be?
I had the screens open.
In Michigan, can you do like Minnesota? Can a Democrat vote in a Republican primary, or do you have to vote?
It's the same as Minnesota, where there's the two sides of the ballot. Yeah.
So if they didn't have it, maybe some Democrats were voting for Smith. Who knows what was going on there? But I'm guessing that U.S. Senate race was so close, they want to vote. They would want to vote with their party.
I highly doubt a Democrat would waste their ballot.
Right.
Some people were suggesting that Republicans might have been wasting their ballot, or voting on the Democratic side of the ballot. And I've heard that, and I don't doubt that a handful of people did that, but certainly not in numbers that would be enough to actually affect. I mean, Abdul still won by over 20,000 votes, even though it was just 1%. I mean, it's still. And by the way, this is huge record turnout. This is the most turnout Democrats have ever polled in a primary in the state of Michigan.
What do you know the percentage compared to
I don't.
Okay, we should look that up.
Not off the top. Sorry, Jen.
But I think we're going to see this in the general too. We're just going to see record turnouts in a midterm.
That was the 8th district. You're right. Yep.
Yeah, that was the 8th. And so we're going to see record turnouts. And hopefully next week we'll have a breakout by age. We'll have more information on who showed up to vote in the primary in Michigan and other states.
Yeah, because it looks like...
Because we think it was going to skew younger. That's what we were predicting.
It might have been less youthful then. I mean, if it had skewed younger, we would have seen, I think, the bigger gap that the polls were predicting. I think the pollsters had the wrong electorate. I don't envy them, by the way. It's an impossible job.
Well, we can talk about this with Duke and Patty.
Yeah.
They're going to be on with us.
I don't envy them either because they have to do polling, but it's really something. But Trump's other big pick in Michigan did win the governor primary on the Republican side.
And the Democrat side was Benson, right? Secretary of State, handily.
Jocelyn Benson.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Very handily. Against the sheriff.
Wow.
In the county where Flint, Michigan is, Genesee County. On the Republican side, this guy, Jones is his name? John James. Close. John James. So his main opponent was this guy named Perry Johnson, businessman, old white guy who spent absolute gobs of his own money running a pretty racist campaign. And the polls looked like it was going to be more narrow than it turned out to be. I mean, John James, 50 to 35, so not that close. There was a third candidate. Well, there were more candidates in the race. 2 others that didn't get. Well, one of them got 13%. That's almost the margin of difference. But this John James guy is kind of a perennial candidate, statewide candidate in Michigan. He perennially loses. So we'll see here. I mean, in what's probably going to be a blue wave election, it's going to be another lost cause for Mr. James here. But
I think the prediction markets were forecasting, people were betting on that Abdul El-Sayed would win with 61% of the vote. So I'm going to guess those prediction markets skew younger. And they were also thinking that he would win by a larger margin.
I don't think those prediction markets predict anything. I mean, they're just ways to blow money.
This is what their perceptions are. Maybe that's for the November. Maybe that's for the November general election. I have to find out what their prediction was for the primary.
I do know that the numbers on those things for like Francesca Hong have gone down.
I just want to know. I want to do an analysis to see if the prediction markets are better at than the polls. Are they beating the polls in their predictions?
They don't predict. The prediction markets don't do like how much a candidate will win by, just if a candidate will win or not.
They just do yes. It's a yes or no.
Yeah. So I mean, they turned out to be. I mean, before primary day, it was like 90-some%. Abdul El-Sayed.
They do like by 0 to 3%, 3 to 6%. So they break it out.
They might.
They do. They might. Yeah,
I mean, any way to bilk more money out of these saps they can get on those websites. If we're talking about Kalshi and Polymarket and that kind of stuff. By the way, Kalshi pays CNN to get that to get them talked about in all those really enjoyable segments with what's his name there that's really fun on CNN that does the God, why am I blanking on his name? Our audience will be mad at me for forgetting his name momentarily, but he's a lot of fun. Holy Toledo, that guy. But yeah, it's then every time they do a segment with him, they're like, oh, what do the prediction markets say? Well, Kalshi says, because Kalshi pays CNN. I mean, it's gross.
Well, on Polymarket, they were 45% of those responding thought the Democrat Abdul El-Sayed would win by 0 to 3%. So 39% said it would be 3 to 6%.
Well, it looks like that first group made crypto. I'm not going to say they made money. They got a return in crypto, which may be valueless the moment they pull it out of their account. I mean, Polymarket is especially noxious because of its crypto association. God, these things, folks. I would never, ever in a million years recommend throwing money at crypto in general, or especially at crypto gambling. My God. My goodness. But yeah, the ballot initiatives, Jen, those are also a really big deal. The
sales tax one, the income tax versus sales tax, Republicans better be listening.
Missouri Initiative number 5, the sales tax one. I mean, these went down they didn't just go down to defeat, Jen. They went down massively.
But the judge one surprises me. I wasn't paying attention to that, so I don't know what the messaging was, but yeah.
Actually, more money was spent for the side protecting the judiciary. And that one, okay, so in Missouri, Amendment 5, which is what you're talking about, would have phased out the income tax, the state income tax entirely. That lost 83 to 16.
Because they saw what happened when Kansas tried that, right? It was a disaster.
Kansas, Florida, Tennessee.
Yeah, disasters.
83 to 16, Jen.
Yeah, Republicans, I mean, that should be plastered everywhere.
And Amendment 4, which would have made it more difficult to do ballot amendments, lost 80 to 20. These are massive. Like, the voters, no, democracy, please. We want democracy. Good heavens. And then, in Kansas, the judge won. That was 61 to 39.
And so they voted against electing judges? Is that what they're voting against? Okay. Because so many states elect judges now, but...
Yeah, so what Kansas does is they have a system whereby the governor appoints Supreme Court justices based on a list prepared by a nonpartisan committee that's set up in the state constitution. So they can go ahead and pick the most conservative justice they possibly can off of a list submitted by this committee, which is I don't know how the committee is selected.
I've never met a nonpartisan person, but okay.
Fair enough. And then those judges have to stand for retention votes, which is to say they still have to face election, but after they're already incumbents. And those are usually pro forma, as in it's unheard of for an incumbent to be knocked out in those. And that's actually not unusual. There's a number of states that do it that way with the retention voting. Not obviously here in Minnesota, where we do the direct elections. But yeah, they wanted to make that change because of the way the governor is restricted to that list. It tends to be more judges, more traditional jurisprudence style judges.
I'm sure they're electing pretty moderate judges, and I've seen many committees structured where they put the same number of Democrats and the same number of Republicans, so they have to come to some agreement, and usually you get more moderate candidates that way.
It might be that way. I don't know. I just read about the process, not any deeper than that. But I mean, it's interesting. It could be a very interesting and and deep process. Also, so I lived in California for almost a decade, and I gotta say, I hate jungle primaries. I think they are the worst thing ever. And what jungle primaries do basically is prevent non-establishment candidates from breaking through. That's really what they're designed to do, it seems. I'm not entirely sure. The people who initially backed those...
They're probably West Coast. They might be moving east, but let's see. California, Washington State, Alaska.
I think Louisiana has a jungle primary.
Yep, Louisiana. That was relatively new. Okay, so more states are looking at these jungle primaries.
They shouldn't. Stop it. California is looking at getting rid of it. And I hope they do, because it just... I mean, what just happened in Michigan, what just happened in New York, Colorado, I mean, these... And it's not like these insurgent left campaigns came out of nowhere. This is years and years and years of organizing and building and developing and all those things. And we hope to have a guest who can talk about the history of that organizing, who's been a part of it since the 1970s. And I want to learn more about that history. But the point is that these jungle primaries really, really put a kibosh on the ability for those movements to gain a foothold. I mean, it's not impossible, but oftentimes what happens is voters have to, rather than vote on the candidate they want to vote for, they have to start thinking like
it's game theory, right?
Yeah, they have to start thinking like strategists. It's like, I can't allow my vote to split so that two Republicans make it through.
Even with ranked choice voting, you have to be more thorough in how you vote.
But at least with ranked choice voting, you can rank number one the person you actually want to vote for.
Yeah. I mean, I think the strange thing is I think people who are independent like jungle primaries because it's basically you can cross the ballot, you can vote for a Republican or a Democrat, in different races. So they don't have that split. But I'm sure they'll start looking at ranked choice voting over a jungle primary. California will probably think about that.
I really hope so, because it's just, it feels like as someone, on the left in California, you just feel like, what choice do I have? I mean, harm reduction voting is the only choice you have, seemingly, in jungle primaries, because you desperately do not want to split the vote between Democrats so that two Republicans make it through. And that's always a concern every year. And so, but I mean, there are a few cracks in the dam in the California primaries. Mai Vaughn winning enough votes to face off against the incumbent Democrat. So that's a 2-Democrat primary, even though the incumbent spent a lot of money boosting the Republican in that race so that she would face off against the Republican rather than the leftist insurgent. And that's the one DSA-backed candidate in all of federal elections in California, the only one. They've got DSA-backed candidates at the state level and lower level races, but that's the only federal one that broke through. So it just shows that those jungle primaries, I mean, if you like the kind of corporate-backed centrists, then you'll like those jungle primaries. If you're more interested...
And the old guard in the Democratic Party that is worried about the DSA and other progressives, they're going to probably support jungle primaries.
They might. I mean, but it hurts them too. It hurts their ability to be flexible also. But again, I mean, and that's something going back to the Abdul El-Sayed win. We're going to learn a lot about the establishment, because remember, yesterday we were talking about James Carville down there in Louisiana, talking about how he wants to leave the Democratic Party because it has room for Abdul El-Sayed and Hassan Piker and other people.
I guess he's left it, right? Because didn't you say if Abdul wins,
well,
he's
he
gone?
said it specifically of Hassan Piker, but he switched. He was talking about a duel and then kind of out of nowhere brought up Hassan Piker. So he's basically associating Muslim names with bad, which, this is a lot of establishment Democrat and certainly all Republicans. I mean, look at that Republican primary you mentioned in Michigan, where the guy with the Muslim name lost. to a guy not even in the campaign anymore. So,
but I think people want to know what this means. Like, my interpretation is because Abdul El-Sayed's margin is so small, less than 1 point, that this probably won't change much in the establishment, in the DNC, in the policy platforms, especially if they don't win in the general. So now there's going to be a lot more. I mean, there's going to be more pressure on these progressive candidates to win in the general, and hopefully Michiganders will get behind Abdul El-Sayed. But it may also deter them from showing up if they're not supportive of Abdul.
Well, you said something yesterday, which I think is extremely relevant based on what happened, which is things won't change until he wins a general election. If he wins the general election, that's when the establishment will change. And so based on that comment and what you just said just now, here's the question. Does the establishment value their power so much that they're going to only half-assedly and half-heartedly help Abdul El-Sayed win this race against Mike Rogers, or do deep down, and this is what I believe. I believe that they deep down would rather Mike Rogers win, because there are Democrats, and they don't say these things publicly, but reporters are reporting that these are what's being said in the back rooms, that think that Dems winning the House and Senate would be harmful to their chances in 2028.
I totally believe that's being said, commented on, maybe not by many, but by probably a few. And
it goes back to the James Carville thing, the roll over and play dead.
The excuse will be, well, we did polling and it doesn't look like Abdul El-Sayed can win, so we're not going to invest in that race. When we need that, Democrats need that seat. They need to retain that seat to flip the U.S. Senate. So it's got to be in the mix. You would think that they would value flipping this. I mean, the senators Democrat senators want the control again. They want the power. Their best path is to win this Michigan Senate. Yeah.
That's the question, though. Do enough of them?
Maybe the people outside of the Senate, Democrats, the DNC outside, may say we have a better chance in 2028 if we don't flip both houses, if it's divided. But I think that the Senate will invest in that race. That's my prediction, is that Chuck Schumer and others will want to retain that seat because it's in their math to retain that seat.
Well, Chuck Schumer, the head of Democrats in the Senate, but the head of the campaign arm is the other senator from New York, Kirsten Gillibrand, and she has made her Islamophobic feelings incredibly well known. I mean, she said absolutely horrific things about Zohran Mamdani during that campaign. She still, to this day, has never said a supportive word about him or anything. I mean, she is clearly
she's also the one that went after our senator, I recall, former senator.
Yes.
Al Franken.
Al Franken. Yeah, mm-hmm. She was the one leading the charge to get Al Franken to resign for a goof picture he took back in the day. I mean, he didn't even abuse anyone. He just took a goofy picture. It was
just supposed to be a joke, and 10 years ago would have been no big deal. But
it was just that moment in time. That was the beginning of the Me Too movement, and Kirsten Gillibrand wanted to wield, she wanted to show how much power she had in the Senate by ending the career of, someone to the left of her. Shocker. She is just dreadful, and so Islamophobic. It's gross, but. Here's Abdul El-Sayed. What is she going to lift a finger for another Muslim guy who also speaks incredibly well? Speaking of which, I mean, when we get a moment, I do want to share some clips from his speech.
So does this mean
morning.
AIPAC's going to support Mike Rogers, Abdul's opponent, Republican opponent?
I think they would have either way.
Probably.
Because AIPAC, most of its donors are Republican. And so one of Abdul's arguments that was really, really strong was when the electability issue came up, and he developed this one just in the last couple of weeks, as I recall, is if Haley Stevens needs this $60 million just to beat me, what the hell is she going to need in the general election? What a good argument. Mm-hmm. And that money, a lot of it, I assume, would have switched over to it's going to anyways. But even had Haley Stevens won, I think a lot of that money would have switched over to Mike Rogers because he's even more
Right, and we made
corporate
AIPAC
funded.
spend a lot of money. They just wasted a lot of money that they would otherwise have spent on Republicans if they support Republicans in general.
Don't you think it's an endless well, though?
I don't know, no.
I mean,
don't
is
think so.
$60 million a lot for them?
I mean, I think it's a lot.
It's a
Would be a
lot.
lot. I mean,
But when we're
and
talking about billionaires and their
well,
spending habits,
related to that, the head of Estee Lauder, the founder, Ron Lauder, huge Republican donor in the past, especially in his home state of New York. He's decided not to spend one penny on elections or campaigns this cycle. So that will help the Dems to have, a few $1 million less helping Republicans, at least in New York.
I wonder did Republicans cross a line for him? I mean,
some line. We don't know what that is.
What line could they possibly have crossed that they didn't already cross? Is it it's this Max Miller escapade in Ohio, the wife beater guy?
He did. I mean, this Lauder, he did pay for a lawsuit to overturn the state's gerrymandered congressional map. So,
which gerrymandered by the Democrats in response to all the gerrymandering that Republicans are doing.
Right.
Well, he's still very much
there's
Republican. Yeah, I mean,
right. But he's got billions, and he's not spending one penny on the Republicans.
Well, that's the thing about relying on billionaires to fund your campaigns is they have very weak constitutions. They have really sensitive feelings, these billionaires. Really snowflakes. I mean, just look at Elon Musk, like the snowflake of snowflakes. And they melt real quick.
I think you're right. I think grassroots fundraising is really important. Getting small dollar donations from hundreds of thousands of people, is better than relying on 5, billionaires. Definitely.
And that's true of these leftist insurgents as well. I mean, I don't think Abdul El-Sayed should at all trust or rely on the establishment to pick up their feet. I think if he's going to win in the general, and he certainly can, and I think he will, but if he's going to, it's going to need to be done the same way he won the primary, on his own, with his people, with that organization doing the work.
He's got to turn out voters. He's just got to turn out people who have, are eligible to vote, get them registered, make sure young people are voting. He's got to have a plan to engage young people, and I think he will. And I think he'll hire lots of volunteers and campaign coordinators and organizers and field reps, and they will make sure they're registering young voters and make sure that young folks know how important these races are.
That's how he spends his money, is on the field. And the win of William Lawrence, that's in another purple district. That's in another tight district. So he's going to have that help of an entire congressional district with an aligned candidate working his butt off, because Will Lawrence is in a similar boat. He can't take a single vote for granted. He has to do the work. And so that's going to help. Donovan McKinney seems like a go-getter, workaholic kind of a guy. Even though that's a dark blue district and he's going to have no trouble winning.
But William Lawrence won, but I thought the vote was split between two moderates, but one of the moderates dropped out. Matt Matzman dropped because he wasn't on the ballot results. Did you see that?
He's on there. He got like 24%.
They just didn't show it in the New York Times or whatever.
You have to click the see more candidates because he came in third. He came in third place very narrowly. I mean, basically, he and Bridget. Crap, I forgot her name. Sorry.
Ryan or Brink.
Yeah, Bridget Brink. Basically got the same. They basically got the same amount of votes. And so people are like, the establishment is coping, saying, hey, if this one of them had just dropped out and everyone consolidated, but there's no guarantee that every single voter for either of those people would have simply gone to the other centrist. That's never a guarantee. You can never assume that. But Will Lawrence can't assume anything, and he's going to have to work his butt off because it was a Trump +1 district. Now, that's meaningless. That can easily flip, especially when Trump is not on the ballot. And it's likely to flip, if we're being honest, because Trump is not on the ballot. But he's going to have to work for every single vote, and that's just going to help Abdul up the
right.
up the ladder. And of course, Abdul will be helping William Lawrence. I mean, it's a very symbiotic relationship they'll have there. By the way, in the district that Haley Stevens vacated, the AIPAC back candidate, I forget his name, but he did win in that one. So her congressional district will remain a force for Israel in the heart of Michigan, which is so strange. I mean, it's so weird. I don't know if you saw the clip that's been flying around. Jon Stewart has been advertising his next podcast, and he had John Fetterman as his guest.
Wow.
And he put out a clip that's really worth watching. I'm going to pull that one up. It's really worth watching. But there's a couple other things related to this. Before we turn to that Jon Stewart moment, Jen, there's a couple of things I'd like to go over with this stuff. First of all, reaction to Abdul El-Sayed. I haven't seen a hell of a lot yet. It's still pretty early. I mean, I'm already seeing the big names in the centrist establishment Dems just kind of ignoring it. And basically, they moved the goalpost, Jen, because there were some polls showing Abdul El-Sayed winning by big margins. And you know what? I have to eat crow because I got excited about those polls as well. And I was feeling pretty confident. And last night I was not. I still felt good about him winning. But man, as the night went on, I just got more and more nervous. There was no way I was going to be able to go to sleep. So I'll eat crow on that. I'll hand it to you. You seem to be much more even keeled about that than I was. But they're moving the goalpost. The establishment is like, oh, well, he didn't win by double digits. Therefore, it's a moral victory for us. And it's like, but it's kind of funny because that's what the left used to always say, right? Bernie almost won. It's a moral victory for the left. And it's like, so now the establishment is in the position of crowing about moral victories. But one of the more bizarre reactions to this came from our sitting vice president, Jen. So J.D. Vance, he's, doing this fraud thing. And I'm going to show a very short little video where he brings up Abdul El-Sayed, and you might be surprised by the context here. I think our audience will also be surprised by the context in which he's brought up.
Are working with us. We don't want the next administration, whoever, God forbid, you're going to have President El-Sayed in 3 years. We don't want him to undo all the incredible work that we've been doing when we've been taking out the fraudsters and saving the American people money.
It was interesting. Andrew Ferguson, who's the chair of the FTC, smirking when the vice president said that. Stephen Miller, I think on this other side, didn't say anything. No reaction whatsoever.
What a person that Stephen Miller. God, what more?
I don't even want to talk about that man. Yeah.
No. Yeah. Mm-mm. If ever a human being looked like a penis, there you go. Although
it's not what he looks like, it's what he says and what he believes.
I'm not being fair to
James
Carville.
No, what Stephen Miller says and what he believes is dangerous.
Yeah, it was horrible. He's a horrifying guy. But here, J.D. Vance is talking about fraudsters. Hello, mirror much? Hello, your administration. But look at what he said about Abdul. It's like, president? Okay.
He's already campaigning for Republicans because he wants to run for president. So
yeah, but he's doing it on racist grounds, so it's very appropriate.
He's doing it when he has the media attention.
It's very appropriate that Stephen Miller is sitting there because it's a racist argument. Oh, heaven forbid it's El-Sayed. Scary name. And that's something, El-Sayed has already brought up today is Mike Rogers, his Republican opponent now, he's campaigning against the name, how scary the name is.
I mean, this is what they did with Barack Obama, but luckily Barack Obama won. So
yeah, because that's,
but in Michigan, a purple state, in Michigan, it's going to be effective, unfortunately, because there is racism in that state.
There's racism in everywhere,
but
Obama
more pronounced
still won
in Michigan. That's true,
and he won Michigan easily. Mm-hmm. So I don't buy the argument that the electorate is baked in. You can't win if you're a woman, or you can't win if you're black or brown. The presidency I'm talking about, because I think we haven't given it a real try, because Hillary Clinton was a deeply flawed candidate, and Kamala Harris was a flawed candidate in a very bad situation.
But look at Republicans with the Ari Hassan, who did not win their primary.
I'm not surprised by that at all. I mean,
so you're saying Republicans are more likely to be racist.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm. And there are more Republicans in Michigan, but it's not a foregone conclusion. That once they get to know, what I experience is once people who have maybe racist get to know the person, their name doesn't matter as much, because now they've been introduced to that person, they get to know that person, they're aligned with their values, and it's a non-issue.
And racism, it's not like a lot of people who have racist instincts at the ballot box wake up in the morning and think, I'm a racist. That's not how it works. It's just a kind of a latent thing. They don't think of themselves as racist because, that the old I have black friends or I have Muslim friends or whatever. I'm not racist, but racism is systemic, and people wind up being racist or doing racist things without having a conscious awareness of it. And, it's like I've seen like members of my own family want to cross the street, when they see scary black guy coming down the street, and it's subconscious almost. If you asked, hey, did you want to cross the street because of that? It's absolutely not. But it's latent. It's just in there. It's just, that's when people talk about systemic racism, that's part of it. That's not the whole story, obviously, because it's baked into our laws as well. But going back to when we covered the debates, they're doing that comparison of El-Sayed and Peggy Flanagan. El-Sayed has already been building the case against Mike Rogers. And he had a victory speech this morning. So last night he gave a speech, which was not a victory speech because the race still wasn't called, but it was a unity speech. He's like, hey, we all got to come together no matter what happens and to defeat Mike Rogers. And he was in the lead, he was in the pole position, but it was by no means clear that he was certainly going to win at the time he gave the speech. This morning, the race was called. Haley Stevens had conceded. And so he gave a speech this morning. And so I'd like to break down aspects. I'd like to break down aspects of this speech, because once again, just like in that debate performance, he did kind of this step-by-step narrative building that, God, it's so strong. When you take the time to build a strong narrative, a lot can go right for you. So, before I share the screen, Jen, I'm going to take the playback speed down from 3 times, so I don't alarm anybody. So this is step 1 of his speech this morning. I've broken this down basically into 4 steps. So step 1 is conciliation. Thanking his opponent, Haley Stevens, and looking ahead.
So my colleague and friend, Congresswoman Haley Stevens, we shared a great conversation this morning. And I know that it was a bitter end to this very long primary, but I also know that Haley brings the best of herself to her work. She is one of the most committed public servants that you'll ever meet. She loves democracy like I love democracy. And whatever differences that we might have had in the primary, they pale in comparison to what unifies us. A recognition that so long as we want to keep our democracy, that democracy better be working for people, and that all of us have to come together to make sure that we never let Mike Rogers see the inside of the U.S. Senate. So, Congresswoman, thank you for your race.
So like I said, step 1, conciliation, bring Haley Stevens and hopefully, more importantly, her supporters in with you. Step 2 now, reflection on what came before, and then moving into the why of the campaign. So here's the reason I'm running, kind of reintroducing himself to voters now that he's the general election candidate.
We built this campaign brick by brick. Back in April, I remember talking to a room of 5 people in a discussion that most people will never clock, but it was an opportunity for us to share an honest conversation about pain, and about purpose. And I've been able to have 500 more of those discussions over the past 15 months. I trained to be a doctor, and the single most important moment that makes a clinical encounter is that moment that somebody shares their pain with you, believing that you could do something about it. I don't practice medicine, as has been well documented by all of you. But I hope that I get to practice that part of things. And I've been able to practice it, but it requires people being willing to share their pain with you so that you can do something about it. That is a moment, a piece of vulnerability people give you because they believe that you can actually fix it. It's an investment, sure, in a campaign, but it more is an investment in democracy. And as we traveled,
it's a really
good point. You got to be a good listener to fix problems because you need to understand the problems. So the best public servants, elected officials, are the ones that can listen and can act and solve those problems.
And I was listening to someone who followed this campaign closely because Haley Stevens basically stayed in Detroit and ran the whole campaign from her headquarters. Whereas Abdul El-Sayed, as you point out, he did well in the Upper Peninsula. He did well all over the state. He was physically all over the state listening to people. So what I heard this person say was that he was hearing about the data center stuff from people on the ground well before it became the issue it has now become. So it started entering his rhetoric, and it started becoming something he talked to people about much earlier than most other candidates who weren't having that strong ground game. So the listening gave him a big bonus in terms of his outreach and ability to connect with voters. So that was step 2, the reflection and the why I'm running and the reason behind this campaign, which was so powerful. Step 3, the call for unity. So he did the conciliation with Haley Stevens and her supporters. Now the call for unity and the naming the stakes, what we're up against.
Now, as bitter and as divisive and as cynical as the campaign against us might have been, I want us to realize that there is so much more that unites us now. Because the campaign that Mike Rogers and Donald Trump and their GOP MAGA allies are launching is already more bitter. All you got to do is look at the ads you're already watching on TV, started today. You know, they think that you want to use my whole name against me. Mike, listen, man, if you can't say the name, it's Abdurrahman, keep the name out your damn mouth. I'll be happy to give you lessons. But they understand that the only way that they think they can win is to drag us into the mud, to believe the worst about each other, to believe that what divides us is bigger than what unites us. They want us to think that the reason some of us ain't got is because of other people got. But it turns out that the reason so many of us ain't got is because of the system that has corrupted our politics to take it away from us. And that is the thing that we are taking on now. That movement to get money out of politics, put money in your pocket, pass Medicare for all, it is a big movement. So if you supported me or you did not support me, if you voted for Vice President Harris in 2024 or you voted for Donald Trump, if you believe like me that you ought to be able to afford your groceries, if you believe like me that you ought to be able to afford your home, if you believe like me that your tax dollars ought to be invested in you rather than sent somewhere else, if you believe like me that a government of the people, by the people, and for the people is our birthright in this country, if you believe like me that we have a responsibility to stand up and walk with our union so that everybody has collective bargaining rights in this country, if you believe like me that you ought to have the guarantee of good health care in this country without some corporation trying to tell you what you cannot have and should not fight for, I hope that you'll join this movement now.
It sounds just like a Barack Obama speech.
Or a Zoran Mamdani speech.
Literally this, I'm sure Barack said many of the same things, Barack Obama. And you can tell he's had a lot of advice from speechwriters and comms people repeating, if you believe like me, if you believe like me.
He's got a similar
good to do. Yeah, his cadence, yep. Yeah, I
to
think that's
Obama.
going to go over really well in Michigan.
I think so.
I think that it's very strong, and he's a very powerful speaker, and he has no teleprompter there. No, he's not looking down at any notes. He can do right off the cuff and be very strong. That's a good sign that you need to be able to do that, to
He's
be a
so
powerful
talented.
speaker.
Yep.
And he's wearing his UAW pin.
Always. Always.
I think that's the American flag, and I don't know, this Michigan state flag.
Yeah. I think so. Yeah. So that's step 3. And now finally, step 4 is first a call to action, like any good political speech should have. And then the pivot to discussing the general and now working on defining his new opponent. He's dropped in little defining Mike Rogers along the way. Now here's where he's going to start the process. And I'm not going to go through his whole definition of Mike Rogers. It's a little longer than this. I invite you to watch the whole speech. It's really, really good all the way through. But this is the beginning of his definition of his new opponent as well.
There is one question of a political philosophy that ought to animate us all is, what would we build? What would we do if we treated all of our kids like they were all of our kids? How would we spend our money? Where would we put our investment? How would we embrace one another? What kind of schools would we build? What kind of healthcare would we offer? What kind of jobs would we protect? And I say this because there could not be a greater contrast between that philosophy and the cynicism of Mike Rogers. See, Mike's a guy who spent 14 years in Congress with one goal: to figure out how to cash out the day he left. And guess what he did? As soon as he left Congress, after having taken corporate check after corporate check after corporate check to empower the corporations to pick your pockets, he went and he cashed out. Not in Michigan. No, winters are too cold for him. He's got thin skin after all. He went to Florida. So, Mike, if you want to be a Florida man, go be a Florida man. If you want to golf in Florida, go golf in Florida. But I promise you in November, we are going to send you back to Florida. Mike Rogers is the guy who wants to put a data center in your backyard so he can make himself feel a little bit more manly by making an AI video. Mike Rogers is the guy who has never shied away from a DTE check so he could turn his face in the direction of Florida. Mike Rogers is a guy who will do anything Blue Cross Blue Shield wants him to do, including raise your rates. Mike Rogers is a guy who introduced legislation to increase the flow of opioids. He did that while I was in high school. Mike Rogers is a guy whose politics and vision and perspective are old. Mike Rogers is a guy who has never shied away from a corporation he could do a favor for. Mike Rogers is a guy who, believe it or not, went back to Florida so he could lick every single boot Donald Trump owns to beg for his endorsement. I'm so sorry. If you want a senator who's going to lick some boots, fine, go vote for Mike Rogers. But if you want a senator who's going to stand up to Donald Trump, then you've got your option right here.
You know what? Everything he said about Mike Rogers, you could say about a lot of Republicans, most Republicans. Yeah. So Dems
including the Florida part.
Yeah. A lot. But I did see, was that Mallory McMorrow?
Yeah.
She was my candidate early on. Yep.
She was one of the people that introduced him at this little event.
That's a great sign.
She called him last night. I mean, she basically, because there were analysts, including Steve Kornacki. I had various screens up, and Steve Kornacki was one of them, and he was doing that data analysis thing where he really thought Abdul El-Sayed was going to win, but he spent all of his time trying to figure out a pathway for Haley Stevens. And he, if he squinted and kind of bent himself and screwed himself up in knots, he could find a way that she could win, but it would take kind of a miracle, which she did not get, obviously. But it seemed like Kornacki, as he was getting more and more tired into the wee hours of the morning, wanted his desk to just call it. It's like, could you just call it? I'm
sure Haley Stevens knew that she was not going to win much earlier than the AP called when AP called it this morning.
Yeah, I mean, because the candidates know their benchmarks
Yeah.
better than anybody
Yep.
else. And she was, and Steve Kornacki knew her benchmarks. I mean,
they know their win number in every county. And if she was not getting her win number in certain counties, she knows she's not going to win. And she probably knew that before she, retired from her party.
Yeah. Which apparently, so one of the big reporters on the ground in Michigan has been this guy, Sam Robinson. Go Sam. And he's been all over the place. So if you've seen any viral videos of a Michigan voter being interviewed, that's almost certainly a video taken by Sam Robinson. He did all those and he put them all up on Twitter and stuff, and a lot of them went viral. But he was driving around to all the different parties, and I saw him interviewed last night. He was on one of the many shows that was live streaming, and he said that he was at Haley Stevens' party. He said there were about 35 to 40 people there, and the host of the show was like, "What?" And he's like, "Yeah, 35 to 40 people." And the host of the show said, "Man, if she can't get more people than millions of dollars she spent in this campaign, what does that say?" It's like, good point. So fascinating campaign, extremely talented politician. And kind of, he's going up against his name. It's not Abdul is a shortening of his first name. His whole first name is Abdul Rahman. So, his is like.
But that wasn't on the ballot. I think he used his shortened name on the ballot.
But
you can put whatever form of your name you would like in most states.
But he has that, like, because of who he is, what his name is, what his background is, he has to be that perfect candidate. Like so many, like Barack Obama had to be a perfect, unimpeachable character, unimpeachable guy. Zoran Mamdani had to be that way. Abdul El-Sayed has to be that way. And so these are three men who are extremely talented, extremely talented at the doing of politics. And that's the only way they were going to break through, was just incredible amount of personal talent. And what I'm hoping is that they're opening the way for more regular human beings to have similar success, maybe not at as high a level as president, mayor of New York, senator, but at various levels. You shouldn't have to be that unbelievably talented and charismatic to have success. But in order to have success against these enormous amount of expenditures against you that all three of these men, again, faced, you have to have something really special. And
more people are motivated to run for office, be it city council, school board, county commissioner. They're running, especially as a result of what they've seen in their community, like in Minnesota, Operation Metro Surge. And in a lot of the communities where ICE has been, and even small communities, you see a lot of those volunteers that were supporting their neighbors and protecting their neighbors get more involved, from volunteers to being more activists, advocates, and now they're running for office, which is good, because not that many years ago, it was hard to find candidates to run for any of those local offices.
That's really good.
So I think people are getting more engaged because they're worried about our democracy, and they're worried about it at every level. And the other thing you mentioned, Abdul knew about the data centers. Like, my mother and her friends up in rural the UP of Michigan had a listening session on data centers. Not that, and so they also knew it was dividing the community, and they needed people to come and learn about what data centers are and what it could mean for their community if there was one in their backyard. So I think it is good that these candidates who know what's going on in their community, who care about their community and their neighbors, are running for office. And you don't have to, pull teeth and arms and legs to get people to run. Now there are multiple people, all good candidates running for the same spot.
And to piggyback on that data center thing, there was a local ballot initiative in Michigan, in a township called Augusta, south of Ann Arbor, so in Washtenaw County, which is a very heavy Abdul El-Sayed county, probably because of the university by and large. But they had a ballot initiative on allowing a data center, and they had to rezone. In order for the data center to go in, they had to rezone, and that rezoning failed.
Mm-hmm.
So when voters get a chance to weigh in directly, data centers are not going to be built. It's when we get these backroom deals and non-disclosure agreements and those kind of things. That's
in the
when
states where they don't need
come.
voters' permission, that's where they're going to get built. And I already think folks in the data center world are looking to downsize and rescale the data center so they're smaller and they can be in existing, empty warehouses or empty buildings. That's what we're going to see, I think.
Well, yeah, that doesn't change the electricity usage and
No.
water usage. It also doesn't change the fact that, and I'm going to keep harping on this until it becomes obvious to everyone. A lot of these data centers are only half built or 1/4 built. It's a huge amount of money and there's no payoff. They still have not figured out how to monetize this crap. AI is still failing as a business venture completely. I mean, it's failing as software. It's failing at what it's being purported to do. First of all, let's be very clear about that. The doomsaying, the crita hype, I think I've mentioned that, but that's a term that has been coined, as in, by hyping up the criticism of AI, you're also hyping AI itself by saying, oh, AI, if we let it off the leash, it'll doom us all like in a sci-fi novel. That's crita hype. I mean, you're still hyping up AI. You're still making it attractive to investors. When in fact, as Cory Doctorow writes, it's basically a word guessing machine in the case of the large language models, or it's a pixel guessing machine in the case of the image generators. It's just guessing what the most likely next word should be given a scenario. And it's just guessing what the most likely next pixel will be given a scenario. Is that enough to replace workers? And the answer to the question is no. And what amount of money would need to be poured in? Because the computer revolution, every time there was an advancement, it made everything cost less. You got more power for less money. It's the opposite with AI. Every time there's an advancement, it costs more and it uses more energy every single time.
And I think it's in the New York Times where I saw the headline where they show where the data centers are or will be located and how they're building power plants to deliver the extra energy that these data centers will need. I know a lot of people who are looking at investing in solar because they believe that their energy prices are going to skyrocket with the use of more data centers. And they're not wrong.
The water going to come from?
Mm.
That's why they like Michigan so much. It's surrounded by fresh water. Mm-hmm. And that's why Minnesota and Wisconsin, these are all states that are very attractive. And it's colder climate,
so it's a lot cheaper to keep these data centers cool, which is a requirement for these supercomputers to keep them cool in their processors.
It's just politically more. It's easier for them to build them in the South where the politics are more conducive to this crap. But the climate and the water supply is certainly better for them if they got the politics to change up here. And they spent a lot of money trying to change those politics, and they lost most of those races yesterday. And now in Minnesota and Wisconsin, we're going to see if they lose those races. I mean, these are the stakes. When I was talking about wishing Peggy Flanagan had been more demonstrative and more mean in her debate performance, it's because the stakes are so high. Because Angie Craig is bought and paid for by crypto and AI and APAC for that matter. But because of who's funded her campaign, I have no doubt that she would welcome AI data centers into Minnesota. Whatever she says,
they're probably being asked about that right now. They're at Farm Fest debating right now, or a little bit earlier today. They were debating it. They were having a big debate.
We're going to have to check that out. There may be some clips. And we should wrap up here, but I noticed at Farm Fest yesterday because our representative, Pete Stauber, the very right-wing Republican, was on the stage, and he lit into somebody else on, I don't know who, but he got really angry with someone else on the stage for attacking Tom Emmer, probably Tom Emmer's opponent. So all's fair to attack Tom Emmer. Now, Emmer did not show up at Farm Fest. He was a no-show. And Pete Stauber suggested that Tom Emmer, who is the number 3 Republican in the House in Washington, D.C., is fighting for his life. That's what Pete Stauber suggested, that Tom Emmer is having some supposedly a medical emergency that is severe enough where he can say on a debate stage that Emmer is fighting for his life.
Someone should fact check that.
Where are the journalists there? What is going on with Tom Emmer? So that's of note. That came out of Farm Fest that we didn't pick up on yesterday. So I wanted to throw that out there. But yeah, no, this is it's a big week for us here in Minnesota and in Wisconsin. Like I told you yesterday, I already voted. So all I can do is sit around and wait. You can only vote once.
My husband voted today too.
Oh, there you go.
And there were other people there voting early.
Oh, really? Okay, I was the only one when I was there. It'd be nice to have seen more people, but I had a nice conversation with the people that worked in the city clerk's office. Really great people. I mean, public employees in those kind of places tend to be just really friendly and affable people. So hopefully you have a good experience wherever you are when you go vote. And if you vote early, there's no chance of those interminably long lines and stuff like that. So even if you're kind of like the process of voting on election day like me, it's still okay to vote early. You don't have to feel like you're missing out on an experience. It was still a fun experience, I assure you. So for now, there is a lot of other news outside of elections and stuff that we want to cover, and we will. But for today, that is going to be our discussion. So for Jen Schultz, I'm Sam Martin, and this has been our Dissent.